Those who have been in a coma, what was it like? I was in medically induced coma for about a week. The coma itself is not much to talk about, there is just a gap in your memory, even from before it happened. I don't even remember the accident that brought me there in the first place. Waking up from it is much different story though. Since I was fully dosed by painkillers and sedatives and whatnot, I was basically high as kite, and since the trauma I suffered was very serious, my brain constructed very stressful, vivid nightmares I remember to this day. I was in a very short coma, 6 days, after a brain hemorrhage. I recall nothing during the coma. I have a fuzzy understanding of my first week or two after waking up, having pieced it together by the stories I was told. And memories of the days leading up to it were temporarily wiped out, though they have since returned. This was over a decade ago, so take this with a grain of salt. My memory in general is imperfect at best. Edit, I should mention that my coma was induced so they could stabilize me and drain the blood via my skull. My mum had the same thing. Unfortunately hers was so severe and she died 5 days into her coma. I'm kind of glad that you don't remember your coma, because I like to think her last moments were having fun with her family, not being scared knowing she was gonna die. I'm sorry for your loss. Edit. Please be respectful in the replies. 10 days I don't remember anything about. Not sure if it is a blessing or a curse. Hit by a drunk driver. My wife and I lived, our daughter didn't. To me that stuff on TV where the PT wakes up and everything goes back to normal is bullshit. When I woke up I was in a conversation with another PT. Air Force had sick bays, not individual rooms. I can only compare it to a computer. I had been hung in an update and then, flicker, new screen. I had woken up several days earlier, but nothing stayed with me. My wife says I was paranoid that they were putting acid in my IV because I was tripping. I was hostile and aggressive. I read the medical records, they kept me restrained for a couple of days after I hit a nurse. I started acting normal, so they moved me from ICU to the sick bay. The blessing is forgetting 10 days of some pretty intense pain. I was broken in a lot of places and bruised and all the rest. Never knew you could bruise some of them. That freaked me out. The curse was I wasn't there when my wife needed me most. There is that tinge of guilt that she faced that grief alone for 10 days. I know, couldn't be helped. Not my fault, but live through it and tell me how it feels. The number of stories in this thread that start with hit by a drunk driver is rage-inducing. As is the number of poster who were hit by people texting. And I'll bet people who would never get behind the wheel drunk will pick up their phones without thinking about it. Put the damn phone down while you're driving, folks. It'll all still be there when you get where you're going. And you're a lot less likely to put someone in a coma, including yourself. There's also falling asleep at the wheel. That's how my sister and her 3-month-old died. Driver on the other side of a 2-lane highway fell asleep, never admitted though, and plowed head on into her. If you're tired, stop. Do not get behind the wheel. I had meningitis when I was 12, which got misdiagnosed for stomach flu and ended up with me being taken to the hospital last minute. The last memory I had was falling asleep watching the emergency news on the Brussels airport attack. I later on had a sort of fever dream, which ended up to be true, about my parents driving me to TGE or saying it's okay over and over again. I couldn't move or talk, so it seemed more like a dream than something that was actually happening. I saw the lights of the parking lot, which made me close my eyes, and after that it was like taking a nap. I had no awareness of time at all. It's like going to sleep and just waking up what feels like a second later, but it's actually morning already. I woke up 6 days later, highly drugged, but only gained consciousness the day after. My first memory after waking up is opening my laptop in the hospital bed to play Minecraft. I have no idea what happened or what I said when I woke up before that. Wakes up from a coma, shrugs, and starts up Minecraft. Those diamonds won't mine themselves. Those cows won't milk themselves. I had a motorcycle wreck a few years ago. Someone texting blew a stop sign and 8 ended up T-boning them. Not sure if coma is the correct term, but I was definitely unconscious for 2 days, honestly just felt like the worst, least refreshing nap in the history of naps. Had the wreck on a Sunday, woke up sometime Tuesday afternoon evening and asked if the bike was okay. It wasn't. I'd love a bike one day, but stories like this always scare me off them. My dad used to live in Vietnam and ride with him mates, and the amount of horror stories has scared the shit out of me. I spent 5 years in Asia, and honestly Vietnam is the worst traffic I've been in. However, the difference is that people are constantly paying attention to other traffic there. It's extremely rare that some accident happens just because someone didn't see something coming. I also ride a motorbike in the Netherlands, and in a way it's more dangerous, because motorbikes are rare and only for fun, and drivers aren't used to them and literally don't see them because they're not expecting something different than a car. Edit, traffic in Saigon for your viewing pleasure, www.youtube.com watch. V1 Zoekvogel 4. I currently live in Vietnam, and the fact that I almost never see a wreck amazes me. I see close calls, but these morons never realize how close they came. They get back to rushing around and using their cell phones while driving or motorbiking. Yeah, that is pretty nuts. I've seen a few dead bodies in Indonesia, but not too many either. What surprised me most about the traffic in Vietnam is that people waiting for a traffic light would stop on the opposite side of where they wanted to turn next, and when the lights turn green they just cross over to the other side without even checking if people will let them. I haven't seen that to that extent elsewhere in, say, Asia. Oh, and the absolute shit cap helmets are surprising too. Not me, but my dad has described his coma after his car accident. He was pulled up a little too far at a stop sign, and a guy who was speeding and on his phone swerved off the road. So he was in a coma for about 2 months. On my end, it wasn't like the movies. He didn't just wake up miraculously. It was 2 months of steady improvements. One eye opened, then a few days later his other eye was half open, then he could wiggle a toe, then he could move his fingers, etc. on his end. He said he could hear bits and pieces of what was happening around him, but it was like a dream that he couldn't wake up from. When me and my 2 younger siblings would come in and talk to him, his heart rate would go down. When a football game was on and his friends came to sit with him and watch it, the nurses made them turn it off once his team started losing because his heart rate blew up. Edit, Hess a fan of the Miami Dolphins, so I guess his hour never fully returned to normal. Edit 2, an award? I've never got an award before. But seriously, thanks for the awards and the stories, guys. I don't know why this is so funny to me. Imagine being in a coma, and your team losing affecting you this much. I feel like there's some comedy gold in there somewhere. There was this story a while back with a similar situation. A Buckeyes fan started showing improvements during a coma when people asked if he liked the Michigan Wolverines. He did not. Ty reminds me of a meme I saw online one time. It was a text post, so I'll just type it out here. My dad, in a coma. Someone changes the temperature on the thermostat. My dad cracks eyes open. Reminds me of the joke where someone was in a long coma and the nurse came in and put Justin Bieber on the radio in the hospital room, and the person woke up out of their coma to get up and turn it off. There was a kid named Martin Pistorius who fell into a coma for 12 years, but his mind woke up 2 years into it. However, he was unable to speak or move, and everyone believed he was a vegetable at best. This wasn't the case, his mind was fully there. For over a decade he was mistreated in facilities that played Barney repeats every single day for years without him being able to look away, true mental torture. He was also physically and sexually abused on top of that. At one point he couldn't stop throwing up, so the nurse's tube fed him his own vomit. His parents were unaware of all this and tried adapting the best they could. In some of the lowest moments he remembers his mother telling him she wishes he would just die, yet all he could feel was compassion for how she felt. Eventually someone who cared enough realized he was responsive enough and got him the help he needed, and now he has a wife, kids, talks like Stephen Hawking, and is a computer programmer. Really shows how you can still emerge from the deepest, darkest places of life. If anyone is wondering, it happened to him due to cryptococcal meningitis. Fungus covered his brain and spinal cord. The disease comes from soil with infected bird droppings being inhaled. One day he was just an innocent 12-year-old playing outside, only for his life to be changed because of simply breathing in some kicked-up dirt. Glad he came out on top in the end. His TED Talk. Locked-in syndrome. I can't think of anything more terrifying. I was in a coma for 3 days following a serious cycling accident, medically induced. I woke up with zero recollection of why I was there or what was said while I was out. It is easily the scariest situation I've found myself in, but I can't say I remember it. I woke up to my mom and dad in the hospital with me and my body in traction of some sort, and that was way scarier to me. Glad you are still with us. Any side effects from the injury or coma?